time in my classic video game review series, I've decided to take a look at a game that is one of my all-time favourites, Final Fight. I loved playing this in the arcades during the early 90s with my dad. A summer holiday didn't seem complete without me and Dad teaming up to take on the Mad Gear gang. Metro City has been dominated by violence and death for many years, a fact that the newly elected mayor and former pro wrestler Mike Haggar plans to change. At the centre of the crime capital is the gang known as Mad Gear. Mad Gear don't take kindly to Mike Haggar's plans to take out their business empire, and therefore kidnaps his daughter Jessica. Haggar doesn't take kindly to this and sets off to take on the Mad Gear gang on his own. He's accompanied by Jessica's martial artist boyfriend Cody, along with Cody's sparring partner Guy, who is a ninja in training. Taking control of one of these three badass street fighters, you will patrol the streets of Metro City, beating the crap out of every single punk and lowlife that comes across your way. Ploughing your way through 6 stages, taking on swarms of bad guys before defeating the end-of-level boss at the end. Simple, but effective. It was this game that first started my love, if you like, of side-scrolling beat-em-ups. There might only be simple games, but you can't deny that they're enjoyable. At the time, the idea of a pro wrestler becoming a politician seemed rather far-fetched at times. Of course, times have changed, and I think the world is a much better place for it. I mean, let's face it, wouldn't you like your mayor to be like Mike Haggar? Tell me, Mayor Haggar, where do you stand on organised crime? On its head! Whoa! Capcom imported the hell out of this game into different formats. I had the Commodore 64 version, which is, yeah. And I even bought a Sega Mega CD just so I could play a Final Fight CD on it. The version I'm playing here is the one that's on Capcom Classics Collection Volume 1, which you can get for either the PlayStation 2 or the original Xbox. If you have either of these consoles and you're into a bit of old school gaming, then go for it, as this version is virtually the same as the arcade. Final Fight is also available on the PlayStation Network and Xbox Live in a HD re-release called Double Impact, which also includes another Capcom classic, Magic World. It's also available on the Nintendo Wii via the Virtual Console. But I should point out that this is the Super Nintendo version. Now, whilst the Super Nintendo did its best at the time, it is lacking a few main features. One entire level, the construction level, is missing. There's no 2-player option, which is a big letdown, and there's only 2 characters. You have to choose between either Haggar or Cody, and then go it alone. Guy is missing from this version. Capcom did attempt to fix the problem later on with another game called Final Fight Guy, in which you could play as Guy, but not as Cody. Nice one, Capcom, but I don't think that's actually solving the problem. The game is also available as a bonus feature on Final Fight Streetwise, but I wouldn't bother with that. Mainly because Final Fight Streetwise is a load of shite, and also because the version of Final Fight on here tends to be a bit glitchy. Capcom would go on to make 2 sequels exclusively for the Super Nintendo. In Final Fight 2, both Guy and Cody were out of the picture and replaced with Spanish swordsman Carlos in his one and only appearance in Final Fight, along with a female ninja in training, Maki, who was really nothing more than a female version of Guy. Although she would make a reappearance several years later in Capcom vs SNK 2 and Street Fighter Alpha 3 Max. It is unusual that Guy is missing from this particular game because the plot of Final Fight 2 is that his sensei and his fiancée have been kidnapped. Okay, so it's Guy's sensei and Guy's fiancée, but where the hell is Guy? You would have thought that it would make sense for him to be in the game. Final Fight 2, although enjoyable, and it did sort of bring in the 2-player mode, really wasn't anything special. Capcom didn't really attempt to do anything new with this, other than having locations set all over the world. It's almost as if Final Fight 2 was Capcom's way of apologising to the Super Nintendo fans and saying, yeah, we kind of fucked up with the first one, but you know, here's the second one. By the time they came to making Final Fight 3, the Super Nintendo was on its last leg, so they needed to pull out something special. That, and it was also now at this point having to compete with the Streets of Rage series. So it brought in new features like super moves, faster gameplay, and a couple of extra characters. You now had 4 characters to choose from this time. Haggar and Guy were still here, but you also had a Blaze Building from Streets of Rage clone to play as well as a guy who could create electricity from his body, so kind of like Dr. Zan from Streets of Rage 3 then. Haggar's days as a pro wrestler would also be on display in another video game, Saturday Night Slam Masters, which takes place before Final Fight. One interesting thing to note about Final Fight is that it was originally intended to be the sequel to Street Fighter. Final Fight's original title was Street Fighter 89 before it finally became its own separate franchise. Since then, Guy and Cody, along with numerous members of the Mad Gear gang, have made appearances in numerous installments of the Street Fighter series. There has been no other sign of Haggar other than his appearance on Saturday Night Slam Masters, although he does have a cameo in some of the backgrounds of the Street Fighter Alpha series where he has one of the Mad Gear goons in a headlock. If that wasn't enough, Zangief has an alternative costume in Street Fighter 4 that makes him look like Haggar. Zangief and Haggar obviously know about each other because Zangief copied Mike Haggar's spinning clothesline, and in turn, Mike Haggar would copy Zangief's spinning power driver, but the two of them have never actually met. So all I can say is, come on Capcom, put Mike Haggar in Marvel vs. Capcom 3 so we can team him up with Zangief, or put him against Zangief, and let's finally see the fireworks fly. Let's finally see that confrontation. But anyway, let's go back to the original Final Fight and finish off this review with a look at the game's ending. After fighting your way for every single punk, thug, pro wrestler, transvestite, knife thrower and Andre the Giant lookalikes, you'll come up to the main boss of the Mad Gear gang, and the guy responsible for ordering the kidnap of poor Jessica. And it's the bloke in a wheelchair. But the sneaky bastard was just pretending. He then pulled out a crossbow and starts spraying arrows everywhere. However, if you're able to overcome this, your last blow will send the big boss flying straight through the window and falling all the way to the bottom. Just like the baddie at the end of such films as Die Hard and RoboCop. Nice little 80s movie tribute there. Depending on the version you're playing, the ending can differ slightly. The arcade version is certainly the best one, although the Mega CD version deserves an honourable mention, mainly due to its cheesy voice acting.
I'm so sorry, Jessica. I thought I'd lost you, like I lost your mother. I'll never let anything bad happen to you again.
So, Metro City is now safe, and Haggar is tearfully reunited with his daughter. Although you do get the impression that Jessica and Cody will have their own private celebration later on. Giggity giggity goo! Truly one of the all-time greats, Final Fight gets a resounding thumbs up from the Big Daddy D. Whoa! Beware.